Well, that must have been a tough one, CBC. Oh, wow. I suppose to have to report this information must be really hard on not just the feminazis within the CBC culture, but all the Keynesians and all the central planners, all those who wish that this wasn't the case, who probably wish that this kind of truth never saw the light of day, right? But hey, there it is. Headline: in financial literacy, women lag behind men, Statistics Canada study says. Only 15% of women could answer basic questions about interest, inflation, and risk. Now, first of all, as I've said before, I'm not a big fan of doing this division of the sexes. I mean, sometimes you just have to delve into it and deal with that, right? You know, that's if you're going to be objective in any way, shape, or form. I suppose that's something you do have to do. But I want to read this whole article so you understand that even though the headline does suggest and reports that women lag behind men as far as understandings regarding, you know, fundamental principles regarding economics and fiscal policy and financial literacy, right? But make no mistake, in this modern world, anyone that comes out of academia, you know, if your education is based in government schooling, the vast majority of people that come out of academia or public school educations, male and female both, have had the Keynesian model of economics, of financial literacy, pounded into their head. So, of course, they don't understand true fundamental and macro aspects of economics, because modern central planners and their propagandists took Keynesianism and the kind of crap they espoused as far as promoting central planning. They took that and they ran it and they ramped it up, you know, to a whole new level. So when you're talking about financial literacy in the modern world, I mean, you're not going to see in public school education, you're not going to see or hear any professor teach you proper fundamentals and principles regarding financial literacy, macroeconomics. That's because they have to function in the paradigm of the state. They have to work. Their paychecks rely, you know, teachers and professors, their paychecks are derived and paid for by their status masters who steal from the productive people of society to pay them. It's not like they work and function in a business type environment where they're truly held to account. In the status, in the government paradigm, or anyone that works for the government, there is no direct correlation between demand and supply, or, you know, whether they're relevant or not. That means nothing, because when you have the capacity to steal and plunder not just current generations but future and successive generations, well, there's no such thing as a genuine business model or anyone being truly held to account. But at the very least, we're at least starting to see some reporting, and I suppose some people are at least recognizing that, yeah, because they see, you know, I suppose if you pay attention to analytics or comments on social media, even lefties must realize and acknowledge that, holy crap, we've created a whole lot of financially literate people by promoting our central planning narrative. And so I suppose they're recognizing and realizing the detriment and negative consequences that will arise, that is arising right now and will arise even further in the future for doing so, right? But anyways, let me start down into this article. Canadian women have lower levels of financial literacy and less confidence in their ability to manage their finances than Canadian men, according to a study by Statistics Canada. The study, carried out in 2014, found that 15% in 2014. So 2016, 2 years later, you're finally reporting this stuff. I guess, when it comes to people that work in the government, I guess it takes a whole lot of time, right? I don't know. Anyway, the study carried out in 2014 found that 15% of women and 22% of men could correctly answer 5 questions on basic financial concepts such as interest, inflation, and risk diversification. So, right there. So the headline, once again, but it's clickbait, right? So yes, women they fared worse. But when you're talking about it, it's 15 and 22%. So overall, you're talking men or females both. It's showing that less than 1 in 4 actually truly have any proper grasp or understanding regarding financial literacy. So to me, that should be the headline, is men and women both, and the age should be brought into this too. But and it is somewhat, I guess, when you read along, you'll see that they do kind of bring that into it. But the macro aspect of this whole study what should be understood by anyone that's going to read this stuff is most people, male, female, old, young, and everywhere in between, most people, because we all, or most of us, come through the public education / indoctrination system, that most people, unless you want to take it upon yourself outside of that to learn these things, is most people don't understand proper financial literacy. They're financially illiterate. But yet, most people, voters are the ones that, right, in democracy, voters are the ones that get to supposedly have these representatives reflect their ideas and ideologies and understandings as far as social and economical aspects in our geographical landmass. So think about it. No matter how you look at it, it's saying that everybody, whether it's politicians or people out in the public, the general masses, central planning, it's all built on not just mysticism, but people that don't even fucking understand genuine macroeconomics or macro financial aspects, right? What? This study is great. At the very least, at least will tell people that won't listen to people like myself. For those of you who won't listen to me when I tell you this stuff, but you need, your CBC, your Central Planning Corporation, or your media narrative, your political propagandists, at least they're even going to tell you. So even though you never wanted to listen to what I had to say, a lot of you, they're even confirming what I've been telling you all along. So maybe you should start paying attention and better understanding what I talk about, because you'll probably see over time, if you follow along and what I espouse and the videos that I put out and the information that I put out, you'll eventually come to realize at some point in time you'll be able to do the 2 + 2 + 2 + 2, and you'll come to realize that, yeah, I speak the truth. And for the most part, I'm ahead of all these political propagandists in doing so. They're just following up and revealing to you the fact that I was right all along. They don't want to. A lot of them they probably can't stand putting out these articles, but they have to. If you put out a study, right? Unless you want to completely, just manipulate and distort that. But that's the thing. Think about if that revelation ever came to light, that they were. So they have to at least report somewhat objectively these truths when it's their own studies. Otherwise, they would just hide that study and they'd bury it under the rug somewhere and it'd never come to light. But if it's going to come to light, they have to at least admit and acknowledge the reality of the information pertained in that study. Even though, like, as per usual, they will try to twist and distort that somewhat. But truth is truth. Those low scores don't mean Canadians are complete doles when it comes to finances. Overall, women scored 58.6% in the 14 questions on the financial literacy quiz compared to 62.2% for men. Even with that number, scoring 58% or 62, think about when you were in school. Were you considered exceptional, intelligent, or someone that truly grasps any concepts or ideas or premises put forth if you only got 50 to 60% on your test? No, obviously not. For anyone to even pretend that they have any leadership qualities in any particular subject or topic, I mean, you got to at least, come on, shouldn't we have at least 80, 90, 100%? Well, 100% is probably difficult for most, although I've always held myself to that kind of a standard. To me, 90 is the lower end of where I want to be. Everything above 90, I want perfection. I like to get to 100. That's unattainable in some aspects, although not necessarily. If you put enough effort in, you can reach that. You can attain that. But those would be the only people that you could truly say that understood fully and grasped whatever premise, whatever information was presented in that particular topic or subject. 50, 60%. Anyways, the Statistics Canada data was drawn from analysis of the Canadian Financial Compatibility Survey sponsored by the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, Employment and Social Development Canada, and the Department of Finance. Women not only scored lower, they had less confidence in their ability to understand and make decisions about finances. About 31% of women said they believed they were financially knowledgeable compared to about 43% of men. But of course, that alone is what they believe. That's still subjective. But either way, it's just showing more cause and effect, right? The financial literacy gap between women and men was larger among older Canadians and among those with higher education. Among those aged 55 to 64, men were twice as likely as women to answer the 5 questions correctly, but among Canadians under 35, men and women had similar levels of financial knowledge. So once again, it all comes down to indoctrination, how well indoctrinated they were. Older people, men predominantly from the older generations, men were the ones that took up education or understand or doing anything that had to do with business or financial transactions. Whereas today, yes, men and women both are raised, both kids from both sexes go into school. There's no exceptions anymore. Women don't stay at home. Women aren't homemakers, caregivers, providers for the young. They're out in the workforce just like the men. So yeah, in the current paradigm, they're both indoctrinated into religious statism. So yes, of course, the younger generations are going to be much more closely aligned with their financial literacy or illiteracy, what I should be saying. The size of the literacy gap also sometimes depends on the gender roles each partner took in a marriage or common law relationship. In couples where a male partner made most of the money or most of the financial decisions, female partners had very low levels of financial literacy. But where couples managed the money together, their knowledge levels were about the same. So even then, yes, of course. Women earn less and live longer. Lack of financial literacy among Canadian women is a concern because it may mean that they are not as prepared for retirement as men, according to Drolet. Women also face different financial challenges than men. Canadian women can expect to live about 4.5 years longer than men and therefore must finance a longer period of retirement, she wrote in her report. Because they tend to earn less over their lifetime, women's savings are generally less, yet the money must last longer. Women are also more likely to need long-term care or face a disability, Drolet said. So like I said, they try to make it a man versus woman thing, which, I get it in some way, I guess, so it kind of does show the correlation of, how the brains work and what they do in their particular environment. But in reality, what I've taken from this article is both men and women of the older demographics or the younger, because of what is pounded into their head as far as financial literacy, and the fact that it's all based on bullshit and mysticism and Keynesian economics and central planning. Yes, of course, most people today have no genuine grasp of what macroeconomics or financial literacy should represent. So yeah, everyone gets a failing grade as far as I'm concerned in this story. That's what I'm taking away from this, is most people, with the exception of a very small minority of people in any particular country, not just Canada, I guarantee this is the same way in most countries around the world. There's a very small amount of people that actually understand these things. Luckily for those of you that watch my videos, I'm one of them. But there are very few of us out there, out here, talking about these things. This article actually helps solidify what I've been trying to tell you people all along, is never listen to the majority or those that you believe, especially if they come from a position of central authority where they directly benefit from central planning or financial literacy. If a person can benefit from financial literacy, you should never listen to their opinion unless they're actually speaking truth to reason and you can recognize that reality. If they don't, yeah, ignore them. Forget anything they say, because they're only trying to promote and espouse bullshit so that it'll benefit them or those like them. That's, in addition to the social aspects, we need to, that's what I do. We need to help promote and expand human intellect, and one aspect of that is a greater financial literacy, a greater financial knowledge, a greater understanding of macroeconomics. That's what needs to happen. That's what we need to do. If we can do that, then people will have the capacity and the willingness to recognize that things are wrong, things are inherently immoral, and that 2 plus 2 is people are trying to tell them that 2 plus 2 should equal 4.5. Those people should recognize and be able to stand up right away and say, no, that's bullshit. 2 plus 2 equals 4 all the time, every time. We need to help them get to that point. So could you do that for me? Help spread this information. Help share my video so that people can understand these things. And we can come to whether we debate or a general understanding, but this stuff has to be hammered out so that people come to understanding that financial literacy is very important as pertaining to not just personal, but social and economic liberties. We have to understand and have a completely universal, objective, moral premise for all financial and economic transactions. This is the Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.